it is presented, and this is style. The way that that article was presented to you, it had an abstract, an introduction, a conceptual framework, a methodology. Okay. It had findings, it had a point of recommendations. Okay. It had a literature review. Did I say that? Okay. It had a review of lit. And that review of lit talked about HBCUs, it talked about inclusion, okay, and what it means to be scholarly. What it means to be scholarly is you're having a conversation. You're having a formal conversation. You're having a logical one based on what we just talked about, this whole notion of inductive and deductive reasoning. All men are mortal. Mr. Black is a man. And so, Mr. Black is deductive. Mr. Black is raised by a single mother. I don't know that to be factual. Plus, he lives in Baltimore City. I don't know that to be factual. He is in need of a mentor. A plus B naturally C. Now, does the research support that? Based on what I read, all right. Classifying research. And when we classify research, we're talking about type of research, okay? Reading a piece of research therefore involves making an effort to understand the reason why the research was done, the way it was done, and what its outcome was intended to be. And if you read research with this in mind, you'll find the answer. Again, you're looking at the design features and intended outcomes. The intended outcome of what I read, it takes a village to raise a family, was to share with us the importance of support for African American males at a historical black college and university, and what that support should look like. Faculty-student interaction, administrators to staff, peer mentors, okay, the importance of role models, all of what you should identify, know that you have access to. You are not in this by yourself. And the devil is a lie, and the truth is not in here if you think otherwise. Okay? All right. These are the characteristics of research. And I will go through this in my source and where I took this from. It appears right there. All right, let's talk about basic research. It contributes to theory. And anytime you see theory, an explanation. How is this being explained to us? Or knowledge by formulating and testing a hypothesis. In the second half of this, we'll learn about what a hypothesis is. Any of it you do not know. There are questions. Okay. Applying a theory or method to a new area. Can you take therapeutic alienation and apply somewhere else? Of course you can. But in what context and how? And evaluating the generalizability, notice that term, of propositions. And this is just a judgment or an opinion across time and space. If you are talking about a particular period, okay, Your audience would know about that particular period in history or in some remote time. And will look for certain things to appear in your discussion about it, and also formulating an opinion about that period. McWhorter always talked about the second generation after the civil rights movement. And I have a correction I want to provide through further research. Brown versus the Board of Education, although it dealt with segregation or desegregation of public schools, that was not the legislation that caused higher education to change.
That's it.
Right. Put that on the record. I may have led my students to believe that that was the law that did it. Now, the legislation that did it, credit millions and millions of protesters under the leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, more specifically Title VI, that gave the blow to higher education, that allowed blacks and other minorities and women to enter into college. Okay? So the Civil Rights Act of 1964, more particularly, and that's what scholarship will do. So I can abandon Brown in my discussion and just target that piece of legislation. But time and period. Research questions are often of a what and why form. In sociology, for example, the question might be, what is sociology? What is therapeutic rehabilitation? What is victimhood? What is separatism? In management, what is quality? So you hear a term in college and you don't know what it is, you need to put it in a question and address that question. You want your instructor to give you everything, but that's not how higher education works. Applied research, and I need to zoom through this. To produce recommendations or solutions to some problem faced by a specific group, black men, or people in a situation, higher education. The aim is to take theoretical insights, social capital, and apply these in real-world situations. You're going to school, participation, higher education. Both qualitative and quantitative data are used. Was there any quantitative data used in this piece of work that I gave you? I don't think so. Okay. Other than the number of participants. And I'm not sure if that qualifies. Questions tend to be of the form how and when. In anthropology, how many of you have taken Anthropology 102? Okay, good research. For example, the question might be, how can the structural functional approach, obviously discussed in a class, explain witchcraft beliefs? And in the organizational studies, how can the low motivation of workers be increased through a specific organizational structure? What I'm sharing with you now, so you can make sure that this is understood across the board, this is what is required of you in most jobs. Your ability to perform these measures. There's a job posted, there's a job post, on the billboard near the Academic Advising Center for a program analyst. Okay. The skill set associated with that job has a lot to do with some of this as I go on. Because if you can't use measures to examine, write about, and share for the